I love watching people succeed.
Yeah.
It's when it's this concept called standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yeah.
When we can help those around us grow and enrich themselves and find themselves more than they ever thought they could on their own,
Yeah.
we get to stand on their shoulders and see even further than we could before because we're helping people grow and get better.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Franchise. We've got our first repeat offender back with us today, Adam Contos, former CEO at Remax, current partner at Area 15. Adam, thanks for coming back, man.
It's good to see you again, Paul. I saw my latest episode, and it was a lot of fun. We had a good time talking about a lot of different topics in franchising.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And I think it's been fun. I think you've been putting a lot of great content out on LinkedIn as well. I've been following along. Has that been like a renewed passion? Is that something you're really leaning into now? Because I think you're a great follow, candidly.
Thanks. I have to have an outlet for my thoughts. Otherwise, it's like a traffic jam up in my head. And, we don't like a traffic jam. We gotta put those ideas out there and see what kind of feedback we get on them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you're anything like me. My wife doesn't want to talk about AI and franchising all the time, she prefers like furnishing our house that we're putting together right now. But anyway, no, I think we talked a lot about last time. We talked about AI and how it's impacting franchising specifically, but how it's impacting leadership. We talked about becoming a better leader. I think you really went into partying with the beast. Like I've told probably no fewer than 24 people kind of about that mantra now. I think it's a great one. And I think today, we're just going to try to build off some of that, right? And I think something we were just, riffing on before this was kind of the impact of private equity in franchising right now, right? And I know you're kind of in the space a little bit with Area 15, maybe less of a set investment thesis. And we were just talking with Bricks Holdings, actually. So they're about 4 or 5 brands. They just got acquired by one of their franchisees who, grew up, had 30 locations, and then was able to control the ownership group. I'm curious, with your lens through Area 15, like how has the private equity venture landscape shifted in franchising, maybe since your time at Remax, 20 years ago when it might not have been too active to where it is today?
Yeah, well, I mean, we first encountered private equity. We took a private equity investment, pre-IPO, so call it 2010-ish. And I mean, it was interesting when you have those folks enter the space because I mean, back in the 2010s and early 2020s, private equity really didn't have a lot of experience in franchising with respect to understanding the business model and the scale that you can create with it. And then they figured out that it's a great source of cash flow. Yeah. So they started getting into it, and not just private equity, but also a lot of family offices. So you have single family offices and multifamily offices that are like mini private equity firms. Only they don't have to go out and raise; they invest their own money. Yeah. So you have a little bit different rules behind it, but ultimately the same goal, and that's to build long-term wealth for the organization. Private equity needs to return it to their investors. Yeah. The family offices, they just reinvest it and return it to some of the family members. So it's really been growing in a very healthy manner. Although every now and then we see a new PE firm or a family office enter the space, and they have to learn about the space. They have to learn about franchising. As everybody knows on here, franchising can be a little bit complicated. However, once you understand the systems, you have 2 businesses. You have the franchise business, and then you have the system itself. It might be like for Remax, it's selling houses. Sure. For Port Subs, it's making sandwiches. For Great Clips, it's cutting hair, things like that. Yeah. So you're learning 2 different businesses and then molding those together. And once they figure that out, they figure out how to synergize the whole thing and add some of their knowledge to it. It's a good addition to the space, I believe.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, what advice would you give to leadership teams, right? As I think a lot of them are getting approached by private equity more frequently than probably ever before. And I would argue earlier. It's fascinating how early private equity is getting involved into some brands, where they'll have 30, 40 units. And it's not, we're 500 units, we're investing to acquire, but they're buying 10 packs. They're buying tranches of franchise ownership. So, if you're an emerging franchisor right now, what advice are you giving out to those folks?
Well, I think you hit on a couple of good key points, Paul. One of which is, do they want to be a Z or a Zor?
Yeah, sure.
And a lot of times there's crossover where they end up being both. But ultimately, it comes down to how can they create decent cash flow. And we know as a Z that to create good cash flow, it's going to take more than one or two units. You're like you said, 10 packs or regions, things like that, where they're going to start developing that out. Now, obviously, that takes a lot more capital to get that going, because if it's brick and mortar, you're building out those locations, you're hiring staff, you're building that from a ground up perspective,
Yeah.
and that can be $5 to $10 million investment for
Yeah.
a 10 pack. So they're looking at a long term staying strategy in that process. Now, franchisors might be a little bit different situation. Most franchisors don't become really profitable until they have,
Sure.
call it 25, 50, 100 units, depending
Yeah.
on the type of business that they are. And I think the private money is going to come in, and they're going to look at that and say, all right, where's profitability? What can we do to maximize getting there? And then, really scale this thing so that we can find a good exit. And then what you see a lot of times is those ZORs being passed from PE firm to PE firm.
Yep.
A lot of times they end up at Rourke after
Yeah,
all of that's going on.
exactly. Yeah.
Who's, they're the big
the catch-all.
exactly. But they want to buy profitable businesses that they can plug their their synergies into, and a lot of times those synergies are a shared services model where you have accounting and legal and HR and IT
100%.
and cybersecurity and a standard POS system, things of that nature. So they're looking at ways to continue to leverage the profitability.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, you call that out well. So we recently talked to the CEO of Bricks Holdings. So they've got like Orange Leaf Friendlies, a bunch of restaurant options in there. And he was describing exactly that, where the only thing that's separate is the marketing. Because they're like, hey, they've got to understand a unique marketing brand here. They got to live through it, and they got to sell it to unique customers, right? But everything else, they try to share service. What should people look out for? Because I do think, I have a venture capital background. I think people have a negative opinion, how widely held, of private equity. I think they assume, hey, they're in here to increase margins by reducing cost. They're going to fire a bunch of people. The quality is going to go down. I think that is a common myth that people have around private equity. Sure, there's some people like that, but if I'm a franchise brand, how am I looking for a good partners? Somebody that's going to build my brand, continue my legacy, keep doing the thing.
Well, that's a great question, and ultimately, as you would imagine, it depends on how well you're running your business to begin with when they come
Sure.
in.
Yeah.
If you're really sloppy and you're bloated in your business model, you have too many people sitting around doing nothing or being inefficient in what they do. These are some smart people entering the space, and they understand where efficiencies are created, and they're not afraid to trim the fat on that.
Yep.
So if you do have an inefficient operation or something that can realize a pretty decent upside, and they're going to be looking for that when they're shopping the brands, you might find yourself losing some staff or changing how your business operations are. But if you're lean and mean and you're generating cash flow and you're running, with the bare bones staff that you need, but you're ready to scale, they might come in and go, all right, you've got something really good going on here. Now let's dump some capital into this and let's add to it so that we can increase that growth and increase the openings and the profitability of the Z's. So they realize this everybody wins concept, where if they're building more Z's, more profitable Z's, that ZOR is going to see some upside, and they're going to look at it and go, all right, what's our runway for an exit here? Are we going for 5 years, 7 years, which is kind of the typical runway on those? What can we get to, and how much scale can we create in our investment here? So it's going to depend on how you're running your business to begin with, and it's going to come down to that CEO of that ZOR being willing to be vulnerable and step up and make themselves better and make their staff better in order to accommodate that.
Yeah, I feel like the best thing about looking for outside capital is you have to go through a diligence process. And it is the best look in the mirror, because they are going to be ruthless. They are going to uncover every stone. They're going to ask you every question you don't want to be asked. But I think it's a really healthy exercise, to be like, hey, where are we inefficient? What could we be better at? How could we put more fuel on this fire, to your point?
Right. And that's a great point, Paul. And, to take us back to the first episode, by the way, folks, if you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it,
Yeah, we'll
because we
link to
talk
it
a
in
lot
the
about,
bottom here.
but ultimately, I mean, take your business model and dump it into AI and look at it from the perspective of a private equity investor or, a family office, and say, what would they be looking at in my business model right now? What are the
Yeah.
gaps that you see that I can work on shoring up in order to maximize the value of my business?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to too as well. When I see like some emerging brands, there's not a ton of like I would call it like P&L literacy across the stack of the C-suite, right? Where it's like, the CEO is probably thinking about the EBITDA, like, hey, how are we trying to become more efficient? But like, is the COO thinking that? Is the CMO thinking that? And I think that's what you kind of see as a difference there is once private equity comes in, everything gets really professionalized. Like everybody knows what we're doing. Everybody's building in an effective way. Is that something you see as well, where it's like, hey, to get to this next level, we do have to upgrade. We do have to treat it like this is a, financial model driven business, which I think is hard to do in your first stages of scaling.
I think you're spot on with that statement. And what you're doing is you're combining two extremes here when you have a franchise organization come together with private equity, because you're right. Franchise organizations are typically really scrappy, entrepreneurial,
100%.
marketing and sales based organizations. That's how they got to where they're at. It's go out there and catch something and eat it. And that's really what that foundation of running a small business is about. And then you've got this other end of the spectrum of the sophisticated, financially literate, MBA educated, people who understand, the financial statements of an organization and how to leverage those in order to grow the business. And you've got to combine those two things together in order to find a happy place in the middle that both can grow from. And it's going to be a little bit contentious every now and then in those conversations around that. I've seen it happen. But the reality is, if we both go in without an ego and learn, then we both stand to gain from it.
Yeah. Do you think, I think there's been talk on the Twitter sphere of like there's potentially a bubble in private equity within franchising right now because of the amount of capital that's getting infused. Do you view it that way, or do you say, hey, no, there's still plenty of room to grow here. There's still plenty of capital to deploy here?
I don't think there's a bubble in it from PE, but I do think there's a horse race going on. And when I talk to my different colleagues in private money investment and franchising, and then I talk to my different colleagues in the ZOR space, because remember, we're both. Yeah. We're both private money investors, but we're also ZORs. And frankly, we're Zs to an extent in certain brands as well. So when you start talking about that, there are a lot of people looking for deals right now. There's a lot of money on the sidelines, so they want to deploy that money, but it's got to be deployed the right way. Yeah. They're not going to get stupid with how they're putting the money out the door, but at the same time, some people are going to get outbid. Some people are going to step away from the table and say, wait a sec, this doesn't work. And we've stepped away from the table in the space on investments. But the reality is people... there's generally no private equity commitment where they're going to rush in and waste money.
Correct.
You're going to see them be smart about it. And I think it's up to the franchisors and the multi-unit franchisees. If you're looking at, bringing in private money, you've got to be smart about it too. Look at it from their perspective instead of just saying, hey, my baby is pretty. Here's how much it's worth. It's way undervalued, so you should come in and pay a lot more for it. But ultimately, they're going to keep you on board most likely. So you got to back up what you're saying. Otherwise, you're going to be looking for a job pretty quick. And you could face some litigation if you sell a bill of goods. You just don't know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I fully agree with you. I think there's a lot of dry powder out there right now, right? Just waiting to be deployed. I think the difference, to your point, private equity operating at the later stages isn't Silicon Valley seed stage money, right? Like they're not just writing a couple $1 million checks to 150 different companies. Like these are very targeted growth investments. I'd love to. You kind of, you mentioned, hey, you guys have stepped away from some deals before. What are those red flags that are getting you guys to step away, after you've gotten in and started some diligence with somebody?
I think the biggest one that we've stepped away from is when you see these red flags start to pop up in the CEO. Sure. And too many organizations come in thinking they're going to take in money and they're just going to give themselves a pay raise.
Sure.
And I think every private investment group has been screwed over that way at some
Yeah.
point, where you come in and somebody's
You're not
raising money.
paying for somebody to get fat and lazy, yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
next thing you see, like the week after you close the deal, the CEO gets a raise.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that happen. And then you go, all right, what's going into operations and scale of the company? Well, we needed to pay ourselves more.
Yeah.
Well, what's the outcome going to be here?
Sure.
So
Are you going to work 3 times as much now?
exactly. How are you going to scale yourself that much?
Yeah.
But the reality is, the culture of the organization starts at the top. And when you start to see weird things happen with the leadership team, when you're talking about this, or as soon as you put a little bit of money in, and sometimes you put in a little bit and then you put in a little bit more later after you see how they are operating there. But ultimately, we look at the leadership and then we look at the outcomes.
Yeah.
And we figure out, okay, is this leader deploying the capital properly in order to create the outcomes that we all agreed upon? And if that's not happening, then you have to step in with a bigger hammer and see what you can make work in order for the outcomes to occur. Because ultimately, you want the franchisees to make more money. You want the franchisor to make more money. You want the brand to expand, and you want it to intrinsically increase the value of that franchise system overall. It's not complicated, but sometimes people just get greedy.
People are complicated. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. It's not complicated, but people are.
Yeah. I mean, if they go out and buy a new boat or something like that.
Yeah, if you get invited to a boat party a month after you've invested in somebody, it's probably not a great sign.
Totally.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I'm curious, I've talked on the show before. So I was in venture capital before. I managed to stay to Kentucky's venture capital fund, raised my own private fund, 68 Capital. And I think one of the things I found in investing was I missed operating while I was investing, because you get to talk to brilliant people every day, right? They're coming through, they're showing you their baby. They've spent years working on it. And it's like, wow, yeah, it's motivating. It's inspiring. I do want to go work for you. That's awesome, And that was always a ticket for me. It's like, if I want to work for somebody, they're probably investable, in my opinion. You know what I mean? And I'm curious, what's that experience been like for you, kind of being on the other side of the table, right? As CEO of Remax, you're fielding all this Inquest, you guys IPO, all that good stuff. How is it not being the operator on some of these deals you're investing in?
It's difficult to not be the operator, to sit back, because ultimately what you're doing is you're looking at lagging indicators.
Yeah.
And you feel bad if there's a miss on something, and you feel like you need to go get your hands dirty and jump into it. But you also can't just do these drive-bys on the business. You're either in or you're out on it, and you have to understand your level of influence and stay consistent with your level of influence and set the expectations around that.
Yeah.
So it's those that do the drive-bys all the time that cause a bunch of chaos in the C-suite of the organization.
Just come into the quarterly board meeting and light a fire and then come back 3 months later.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, stop distracting everybody and let them do what they're supposed to be doing, for crying out loud. So I think that's what it comes down to, is the clarity of the expectations of the investment group, and what level of involvement do they want to have with it. Mm-hmm. Because realistically, I don't know of any PE firm or family office that says, I want to go out and be in franchise sales. Yeah, or I want to go out and try and figure out SEO and marketing and work on that all the time. They want to watch their investment grow, and they want to sit there from a 30,000 foot view and kind of bump it, into the guardrails and make sure it stays on the road and in the direction they want. Yeah. So don't be the one who's reactive and running into it. And if you're in a franchisor and you're looking for an investment, ask that question and say, okay, what level of involvement can I expect from you? And how do we keep all of us to stay in our lanes from your perspective? That's important to us, is that we do our job, you do your job, and we supplement each other appropriately, but we don't want to be running into each other on the playing field.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's a great delineation, because it is. I've definitely been in those board meetings where it's like a random guy just starts a shit fire that everybody now has to deal with. And it's like, great, all of our focus is left growth because you want to talk about this one thing, and it's never additive.
Right. And a lot of times that comes with what are the key investment directives of that private equity firm? So if you get a private equity firm, and let's just call it what it is. We've seen a lot of discussion around like DEI and Cracker Barrel and things like that going on. I mean, do you think they're talking about selling burritos and sandwiches right now? No, they're distracted by what's going on. And we've seen a lot of other companies go through it. I mean, you could name a whole bunch of them that have been distracted by different, political influences. Are we going with green? Are we going with Americana? Are we going with, we're anti-tariffs, we're pro this?
Which side are we picking almost, right? And it's a little short-sighted in my opinion when it's like your consumers just want your product. They don't necessarily care about what side you're taking in this culture war, right?
Yeah, I would say the biggest takeaway from this conversation is franchisors, stay in your lane. Sell franchises, increase same-store sales. Franchise investment groups, stay in your lane. Invest in the business and help develop the leadership, give them the resources they need. And then everybody should be happy. Yeah. Don't throw a bunch of distractions at each other.
Yeah. Be great at what you're great at. I think what's fascinating to me is Cracker Barrel's still up like 35% year over year. Their stock is. So I'm like, there's a shitstorm happening for them when they're doing great as a company. Like it's a wild time.
Right, but we haven't seen the quarterly reporting since this whole thing's blown up. So let's wait and see how that comes out. Yeah. And if they're doing great, fantastic. This is a distraction for everybody. If they're not doing great, do we need to make an adjustment? Because you look at like Jaguar.
Yeah,
and what they did.
Yeah.
I mean, they dropped substantially in their revenue.
Oh yeah.
And you go, okay, it was a marketing attempt by them to reinvent themselves, and it didn't work.
No.
Have a plan B and be able to shift your plan B, for crying out loud. Because if plan A doesn't work, don't die on it. Keep going on.
I mean, I love this conversation. You've got a better perspective than anybody being at Remix. I'm assuming every capital project you led didn't work. Like you had some failures along the way, I'd have to guess. Like, what was that experience like for you? And, if you're talking to the CEO of Cracker Barrel, the CEO of Jaguar, what's your advice beyond like, hey, have the plan B? Clearly they don't have the plan B. Now what?
Yeah, it's interesting because there's always somebody who runs into the C-suite and has a new initiative and they're like, this is going to change the world.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder, okay, is this going to impact the three key things that we do? And at Remax, we always said, we sell franchises, we recruit and retain agents, and we collect the money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds simple. Relatively simple. Exactly. And we did a brand relaunch while I was there. Yeah. We took the balloon, just kind of tilted it a little bit, straightened it out. And
what was the philosophy behind that? It's the consumer is 18% more likely to purchase if the balloon is at a right angle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the original one was the balloon was like blowing in this massive windstorm, but the reality is it hadn't been touched up since the 80s, and it was like 25 plus years, and we did a whole bunch of surveys. You don't want to make any changes without doing thousands of interviews with the customer base and the franchisees and anybody else that is a key stakeholder in the success of the organization. And we did that. We did, I want to say we did like 5,000 or 6,000 interviews of people in the U.S. and Canada, where the foundation of the organization was. And it literally took 12 or 14 months in order to go through this. It wasn't just off the cuff, and it wasn't it was an evolution, not a revolution, is what we said. Yeah. Where you do have brand refreshes that are revolutionary, and people are shocked. Yeah. And again, with the Cracker Barrel situation that's in the spotlight right now. Yep. But ultimately, it comes down to, is this going to help us? Yep. And is it going to help the marketing? Is it going to help the suppliers? Is it going to help generate more business? Things like that. Mm-hmm. You're not going to lose brand name awareness, but you're going to gain an idea as to brand loyalty, because people are going to go, wow, I like the next iteration, things like that. Yeah. That's what you're going for. But realistically, it comes down to, does it affect what you do? Yeah. And if it affects what you do and how you do it, then you have to take a step back and go, okay, is this really going to be effective? Maybe do a
Yeah.
trial process in a small segment of your business.
Yep.
Restaurants do that all the time. They do menu changes in small segments all the time
Yeah.
to see if it's going to work. If it works, they spread it throughout the
That's right.
system.
Yeah.
And it's just this is a good example of that. People test market different products and packaging in little segments. Just be smart about it
Yeah.
instead of throwing caution to the wind and being stupid about
Yeah,
changing
I
the organization.
I think it's definitely a challenge for legacy brands, though. Like I think Cracker Barrel clearly they've got a demographic problem. They've got to find a younger generation to get interested into the brand, right? And that's in my mind what that rebrand was an attempt to get more modern with it, bring in younger generations. I think it's really hard to figure out how the cultural zeitgeist is going to respond though, because you look at like Chili's. Chili's is on a massive tear right now because they started doing social around their apps. Like and that caught something. I think of like White Castle, even right, similar thing there, where they were able to catch people with a Hollywood movie, and so I think it is a challenge. How do you think about that for a legacy brand? Like obviously Remax was a well-established brand while you were there. Like, how do you continue to create longevity as generations change? Because I think that's a unique business problem that not a lot of people have to deal with. Not a lot of people run in and have a 80 to 100-year business they're running. You know what I mean? Like Flamel is 3 years old. I could change the logo tomorrow and nobody would even notice, right? Like, but Remax, Remax has a new logo again. I saw this year where it's just a symbolic balloon instead of an actual balloon. Like, how often are you thinking about connecting to a newer generation as a CEO of a legacy brand?
I I think you're always trying to figure out what the next generation wants with
Yeah,
respect to your product. And the reality is what Remax does did not change at all. I mean,
sure.
they
Yeah,
still buy and sell houses. The logo has absolutely no impact on that.
yeah,
Now, that being said, like your logo has absolutely no impact on what your customer base gets.
correct. Yeah,
It's an update on that. Now, when it affects the customer base, like the Cracker Barrel piece,
yeah,
or Jaguar or Harley Davidson went through this as well because they were
yeah,
trying to chase generations. Then you gotta ask, okay, is this going to be the right thing for our existing customer base because we have loyal customers? You go back to that whole concept of 1,000 true fans or 1,000
yeah,
loyal fans or raving fans or whatever it is.
yeah,
And they're the ones who are going to drive the customers, and they're the ones who are either going to accept or not accept your changes around this. I think you need to harness that component of it and
yeah,
say, all right, with this update, can we get our influencer base, which is huge, to magnify the positivity of this?
hmm,
And you see that with Coca-Cola and some other brands like that as well. But
yeah,
realistically, it comes down to you better do your homework
yeah,
around it. You better
yeah,
test all these different angles. You got to ask the people who are your true loyal customers, what do you think about this? Will it help? Will it not help? And how can we help you help us?
yeah.
Because that's what it's about. It's not about somebody sitting in the ivory tower
Sure.
at
Just making a call.
headquarters. Yeah, making a call going, oh, yeah, this is going to be great.
Yeah,
And all the marketing people who want to put their name on it because this is their lifetime chance of changing an iconic brand. And it's
100%.
it's great on the LinkedIn profile or a resume.
Yeah, the resume is going to be
So,
spot on.
oh, yeah, totally. Until you fail at it.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
and then you're like,
Shit. I've got to
I'm not
change
going to.
industries at this point. I can't be in
Yeah,
restaurants anymore.
totally. Or go find somebody else that has a bad brand and wants to make
Yeah.
it worse. I don't know. But I don't know. You got to go back to, again, what do you do? And if you forget about what you do and who you do it for, then you're going to screw things up.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious. What would you do? Like, if you're the CEO of Cracker Barrel right now, right? Like, obviously, there's a lot of negative attention happening on it right now. How are you handling this? Like, it does not seem like they had a plan B, to your point. Like, we haven't seen anything really fundamental come out. What would you be doing right now if you're them?
I see. I don't know the
Also, do you
exact.
know the CEO of Cracker Barrel? I don't want to be like talking about.
I
Okay,
don't.
okay.
No, I don't. And I mean, waking up in the morning when you're dealing with something like that as a CEO is not easy.
Yeah,
So, I have to give some grace to her
yeah,
when it comes to that. Do I agree with the decision? I mean, was it broken?
yeah,
So, And that's the big question you have. And did they test it and things of that nature? We don't know the answers to those things.
Sure.
But ultimately, we know they're sticking by their guns on it.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know the outcomes when it comes to their business metrics and the
Sure.
lagging indicators on it. So it's hard to answer that question. You always have to be prepared to say, we heard you and we love you and respect you as our customers and we want you back. So here's our commitment. We're going to do this.
Yep.
And, there's a happy compromise somewhere. But keep in mind also that we're in this cancel culture still for some reason. And I mean, the reality is you can't go, oh, that business decided to make some changes. Good for them. Let's support them. I mean, I don't see anybody coming out and saying that. So
well, that doesn't get a lot of views, Adam. We can't just come on here and say everything's wonderful. Nobody's going to listen to anything then.
But I mean, here's the reality when it comes to their change.
Yeah.
Was it a change from the Americana and the traditionalism that we've really embraced in the country at this point? Yeah, it was. But was it a radical approach to that? No, it really wasn't.
No, by no means.
So frankly, I think probably what's going to happen is they're going to reach out to their loyal customer base. I'm sure they have a loyalty program. I hope they have a loyalty program. They're a restaurant for that matter. Yeah. They'll send out a bunch of coupons. They'll tell their customers how much they appreciate them, and they'll slowly win those people back, most likely, because I bet you they have millions of dollars invested in this change. Yeah. And the CEO needs to get in front of the board. The board might say, you're done. Yeah. But they also might say, we expected this. You're right.
Let's give it like a news cycle. You know what I mean? Like give it a news cycle and the world will have something else to be mad at next week.
Yeah, exactly. They just need somebody else to come up and do something stupid. And then they're back to page 5 of Google.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot about like Domino's, right? Where like they came out and they were just like, you're right. Our product sucked. Like, here's what we've done. Like, I think that's an extreme case. Like, by no means do I think Cracker Barrel should come out and be like, we suck at this. You know what I'm saying? But like, I think it's a hard thing to do. But if you get it right, it earns a lot of loyalty. Like, it earns trust from people to be like, oh shit, they do care. They do hear me, which is hard to do at that scale.
Yeah. Or you could parody the whole thing and make fun of it. You look at American Eagle jeans. I mean, with Sydney Sweeney and those ads, and then everybody started making fun of it, and it magnified it, and everybody that was throwing stones at it just kind of felt like a bunch of morons because they were getting made fun of for making fun of the brand. So I don't know. There's a lot of solution to this. I'm no marketing expert. I run a couple marketing departments and spend a lot of money on it, but I still wonder kind of how the human psyche operates when it comes to these things.
It is. I mean, the Astronomer is like another great one that's happened since we've talked, where it's just like they brought in Gwyneth Paltrow of all people. You know what I mean? For like a stupid software company, it's like I love that though. I thought that was brilliant. That's a peak move right there.
Oh, you know what's funny about this?
What's that?
We just listed this litany of corporate branding failures, and and they didn't happen that long ago.
No, this has all been pretty recent stuff. Yeah. There's opportunity out there is what it sounds like. The opportunity to build a great brand is what I'm hearing.
And there's always an opportunity to screw it up, apparently.
But that's why we party with the beast. You got to make those, scary decisions and just run with it, right? You got to be willing to lose your job. That's part of making scary decisions as well, I think. You got to, be willing to take the big swing because who knows? Cracker Barrel might be more profitable than they've ever been this year because of this.
You never know. I guess we'll find out.
Yeah, earnings will be interesting. No, I love that. That's funny. Maybe winding down the conversation a little bit. I'm curious, what's next for you? This is something I don't think we got into a lot. We talked a lot about building leaders. We talked a lot about how you've been a great leader. Maybe not too forward to say you're entering a second chapter in your career. What's going to happen? You're not going to go back to being a SWAT officer, I'm assuming. So what do you wake up inspired to go do over the next 15 years of your life?
Well, for the record, my wife has told me I can no longer go kick doors and chase bad guys with guns. So
you know what? That seems like a fair trade, though. Like it's a doable trade.
Yeah, I had an invite and I wanted to go do it, and she's like, "No."
You actually got invited back to do it?
Yeah, totally. So but I love growing businesses. I love building leaders, and I'll go back to the beginning of this podcast, and that's where we're talking about private money and franchising. And I'm really interested in that impact in the space because it's not going away. I think it's going to continue to grow, but it's incumbent upon us as kind of the people that have been in the space for decades and seen it come in and seen it evolve. To help this relationship grow between emerging franchisors, multi-unit franchisees, let's say mid-stage, and also mature franchisors as well. And all of these different people who want to invest in our space because it's a great space. It's growing. It's not shrinking. It's growing faster 100%. Than the GDP is growing. So, I mean, let's take advantage of this, but let's educate all these people in the space in order to continue to grow this. So I'm working on a lot more of that. If you're in private money and franchising and you want to reach out to me, just hit me up at adam@area15ventures.com, or you can go to our website area15ventures.com and connect with me there. But realistically, that's one of my dedicated focus points. I still nudge the franchisors around a little bit in our portfolio and help with that, help the franchisees. I think when you've seen enough wins and losses in the space, you can share those ideas and the business principles around them with people. But ultimately, let's make the space better. But we also need to make sure that when we have people entering the space, that they fully understand perspective. And they'll teach us stuff. We'll teach them stuff. I come from both sides of it. So we can have those conversations. And that's what I've been working on lately and what I'm continuing to do.
And building off of that, I love asking this question to people as they get through their career. Do you think about your legacy / do you think of it as an active thing that you're trying to build? Or do you think of it as a passive thing of like, oh, it will come as I complete these things that I've done?
I think about the legacy of myself, my partners at Area 15 Ventures, and those in the brands that I've been part of. And I want people to go, that guy helped me build my business. And that's what I'm going after. I love watching people succeed. It's this concept called standing on the shoulders of giants. When we can help those around us grow and enrich themselves and find themselves more than they ever thought they could on their own, we get to stand on their shoulders and see even further than we could before because we're helping people grow and get better. And that's, I think that's really what touches my heart when it comes to the space, my goals, the goals of the people around me.
That's awesome. Now you got to look out for the Remax / Area 15 Mafia, just like the PayPal Mafia. You're just going to have a cadre of 30 people around you building billion-dollar brands. That'd be the goal. Adam, once again, it's been awesome having you on. I'm super glad you were our first repeat, and who knows, maybe there's a third episode for us out there in the future. So thank you again for your time.
Hey, thanks, Paul. It's great to be on here, and everybody, thanks for watching today. Make sure you send this out to your friends. We're trying to grow franchising.
Yeah, exactly. We're trying to do the thing. As always, go read his book. Start with the Win. I'm sorry, I've got the cover off. It does have a cover. I just don't read with covers on. Start with the Win. There you go. The better branding. Area 15 Ventures. Adam's on LinkedIn. Definitely a good follow. You're on Instagram a lot as well, I've seen. You're posting some videos, content up there as well. So everybody, check him out there. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And Adam, thank you again for being on. And to everybody else, we'll talk to you next time.